Welcome, everybody, to episode 150 of WordPress Weekly for Friday, May 30th, 2014. I am your host, Jeff Chandler, joined by Sarah Gooding. Sarah, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic because after today I will be on vacation, so who wouldn't be happy about that?
Oh, boy.
And this has been a short week. It's been a 4-day work week, but I don't know. To me, it's been one of the longest 4-day work weeks I've ever lived through. It's been rough for me.
Well, I'm excited about you going on vacation.
Oh man, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, I'm sure your production will be very high now that you won't have to spell check my posts.
Yeah, for sure.
So we have a special guest with us today. His name is Ryan Vaughn. We'll talk to him in a little while. He's the CEO of Varsity News Network, site and service that caters to the athletic departments of high schools across the country. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But we want to cover some of the news stories this week, and undoubtedly one of the biggest stories of this week was the WordPress.com security vulnerability, which was disclosed by Yan Zhu. Hopefully I got her name right. Over on her blog, she had publicly disclosed a security vulnerability that she discovered with WordPress.com, and specifically how it handles cookies. It has to do with the WordPress logged in cookie being sent in the clear to a WordPress authentication endpoint that she discovered, and she was able to use that authenticated cookie to publish blog posts, view private posts, post comments on other blogs, and things of that nature. But with some things she was not able to do with that comment because it required a secondary login. And the big hubbub of the story, for me, at least initially, was how the disclosure process happened. She had contacted security at automatic.com and then security at WordPress.org, as the directions say to within the WordPress core handbook, but within 24 hours of notifying Automatic, Zhu publicly disclosed a vulnerability on her blog, which then was picked up by Ars Technica, and then it sort of blew up from there. And had me thinking about this term called responsible disclosure and whether or not what she did was irresponsible. But there was a lot of confusion with regards to, is it just WordPress.com, or is there an issue with WordPress.org? Are millions of people now at risk? So I wanted to bring on the person who could help straighten this out for all of us. Andrew Nason, he's one of the lead core developers for WordPress, and he is the one who actually sent an emailed statement to Ars Technica about whether or not WordPress.org was affected by the same issues that she had reported for WordPress.com. And Andrew, thank you very much for being on the show.
Sure, Jeff, not a problem.
So, Automatic states they'll try to contact a reporter within 24 hours, but after 24 hours, I don't think she had heard a response. She publicly disclosed the information, and it's obvious she had the best intentions in mind of reporting the issue and trying to get users to protect themselves and things of that nature. I just wish that she would have waited, maybe 48 or 72 hours. Chances are I wouldn't have written about it. Maybe it would have become a non-issue, and maybe even Ars Technica wouldn't have wrote about it. But tell us, sort of clarify what the issue is that was reported and whether WordPress.org, the self-hosted version of WordPress, is affected by it.
Well, I think there's ultimately a lot of nuance here. I just wrote a blog post about this. If you wanted to read more information that we're going to cover here, it's on nason.com. It's called Security is Nuanced. I think in this case, first off, the disclosure was very well intentioned. There was an assumption that this was based on a design decision, and that WordPress does have fairly patchy SSL support, as you'd call it. It doesn't handle a fully forced SSL site very well. And I think perhaps the thought is, in this case, the worry was that maybe it would be just a won't fix, or it would be well, we're working on this, but it's a very slow process, and it's deliberately set up this way. And that's true to some extent in WordPress core, where there are a number of fairly latent minor issues that should be addressed over time. Ultimately, though, in this case, what happened is that they all kind of spiraled out of control because of certain things that was happening on WordPress.com. And it turned out that it was something that WordPress.com could have fixed very quickly, and that just wasn't really recognized. So basically, it comes down to a number of different things as to what had happened, but essentially, WordPress has two different kinds of cookies. It has a logged-in cookie and it has an authentication cookie, and they're split between the logged-in cookie works on the front end, the authentication cookie works specifically in the dashboard. The trick here is that the authentication cookie has the ability to be secure, while by default the logged-in cookie doesn't, because WordPress as of 3.9 doesn't support knowing that, hey, the front end is only deliverable over SSL. And basically, in this case, on WordPress.com, where you have a lot of front-end stuff like their new dashboard, what they call new dash, or WordPress.com/settings, things like this, by default, this would normally use the weaker cookie when they should have configured it to use the stronger cookie. So it's now using the stronger cookie. It was a pretty quick fix, and they were fixing all sorts of other issues. But it's not. I know you led the show talking about like a WordPress.com vulnerability. Ultimately, especially for a web service, they're going to be finding and they're going to be creating vulnerabilities all the time, and they're also going to be finding and fixing them all the time. In fact, they have a new bounty program. You can go to hackerone.com/automatic, and it will list all of their bugs that get submitted and disclosed and whatnot through those means. So they're resolving bugs. I mean, you can see going back even just the last few days where they've resolved, it looks like 40-something individual, vulnerabilities per se, somewhere in software that Automatic is running. None of this is in core WordPress software or anything like that. It's just a matter of, hey, I was able to do this really weird thing on this one page. This needs to be solved. And that sounds like a great idea. That should definitely be fixed. And ultimately, when you're dealing with a hosted service like Automatic, they're able to work a lot quicker to not only fix these, but also they're developing the software much faster. And so what ends up happening is that they're continuously integrating code. Things will go wrong over time. It's a lot different than, let's say, WordPress, which is going to be very massively and widely reviewed, carefully code reviewed, and only get shipped every 3 or 4 months. It's just a different approach to things. So I think I've kind of explained really how it works and what happened here. It ultimately wasn't that big of a deal. I think a lot of it was just people were confused, including the reporter and also a lot of other people who wrote about it, whether it was the post on WP Tavern or commenters there or on Facebook or elsewhere, where people weren't quite sure what the real problem was or why it was this issue or whether it was like cookie expiration lifetimes or things like that.
So when it comes down to disclosure, I thought that what she had done, I'm not a software developer, but I've always looked into it as, well, responsible disclosure is if you discover a vulnerability, then the proper etiquette is to privately inform the vendor and maybe agree upon a time frame in which you would tell the public and allow them time to do the fix. I mean, isn't that really in a nutshell what responsible disclosure is?
Yeah, that's a pretty good description of responsible disclosure, but it's not the only thing that's out there. There's also, of course, full disclosure, and there's various levels between those two ideals. And at the same time, though, we're not dealing with a software vendor per se in this case. WordPress.com is a hosted service. It's not software that needs to be distributed. There's no new release that needs to occur. There are no users that need to watch security reports and make sure they're updating. Rather, it's being taken care of, on the fly. Ultimately, I don't think the disclosure necessarily caused any problems. I also don't think that the fact that there was a disclosure, it caused Automatic to work any quicker than they were already trying to fix this. I think one of the problems that the report was the whole issue was so nuanced that it took Automatic a bit of time to realize what the actual issue was and then what their fix would be. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm always going to be for responsibly disclosing issues. At the same time, I don't think that this was necessarily irresponsible. I think everyone could have done it a little better here, but I know it was certainly well intentioned, and I have no problems whatsoever with really what happened or how it went down. My main thing for responsible disclosure of security issues is that vulnerability reports need to be correct and they need to be complete. And a lot of times, a lot of reports that bypass the vendor or the service provider or whatever it is aren't actually complete, or they're invalid, or whatever it might be. So in this case, it was definitely a valid report, but there was a lot of confusion as to, did it affect WordPress? Did it affect WordPress.com? Ars Technica's original story used WordPress in it, and we got them to change it to WordPress.com. The headline still says WordPress, but that's okay. It's not the end of the world. Again, there's just so much nuance in this one issue, because, I mean, really in this case, there was probably 5 or 6 things that had to go wrong for this issue to happen. So yeah, ultimately it wasn't that big of a deal, but you know, everyone sees WordPress in the headlines with the word security, and that's always going to cause people to think about it.
Lesson learned, definitely, from my perspective on writing about the story. I almost wish I didn't. I wish I would have sat back and watched things fall into place. But no, lesson learned. Nathan, thanks a lot for coming on the show and give us some clarification, and we'll definitely link up to your Security is Nuanced post after the show in the show notes.
Sure. Thank you very much, Jeff. Thanks, Sarah.
So some big news this week for developers. Unfortunately, probably a collective sigh of awe, because it won't be in 4.0, but it has been put on the roadmap of WordPress 4.1, and that is the JSON REST API. So, Sarah, you caught wind of this, and why the pushback to 4.1?
Well, I guess it hasn't had enough eyes on it and enough real world experience or out in the wild. So some people are using it. It's pretty cool. They're using it for different things and experimenting. But I think the consensus with the devs at the meeting was that it would be good to have this a little bit more polished before just trying to push it through 4.0. So they're going to put it into 4.1 if it's ready. I mean, it's not a guarantee anymore, but it's slated for 4.1 now.
And it does exist as a plugin, so people can download it, use it, test it right now if they wanted to, right?
Yep. It's in the WordPress.org plugin directory.
Okay. And I know one of the cool quotes by Ryan McHugh, who is spearheading the project, said, quote, "I believe it will really open up WordPress as a framework that's easily accessible to everyone," end quote. And the more I listen to these like WordPress think tank shows that was on the other day, with talking about the future of WordPress and reading all these other articles about the future of WordPress, it seems like there is a lot of money, a lot of bets being placed on this JSON REST API. It seems to be the next, what will power this revolutionary boom of development work for the next generation of WordPress.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I think a lot of people are excited about when it'll be in core. So hopefully they can get more contributors and people jumping in on it now and get, just move it along to where it needs to be before they put it in.
So Alex Shields, he put out a proposal on the make.core.wordpress blog for improving the WordPress plugin management page. While WordPress 3.8 and 3.9 substantially improved the theme experience within WordPress, and I might add they look really pretty now, the plugins page hasn't had the same treatment. In fact, the page hasn't changed much since WordPress 2.7, if you could believe that. It's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
So Alex Shields put together a detailed outline, and I agree with most of the changes on his outline. Things I'm looking for that I'd really like to see in the back end of WordPress on the management page is the ability to give feedback, whether that be rating the plugin or doing contributing a review right from the back end of WordPress. That would be neat. I, as well as many others, would like to see the search engine for plugins to be improved. I know Alex has that, is currently working on that, the API for searching WordPress plugins, but it would be cool to sort of organize the results by ratings, reviews, downloads, things like that. And just a little quirk that I've noticed is the visit plugin site URL. Sometimes it's hard to discover. You have to actually go to WordPress.org and find the plugin, do a search, find it in order to find a place to get support for it on the forum, to rate it or whatnot. And I think the visit plugin site URL should actually be the link to the listing of that plugin on the WordPress repository. So it would be easier to find, to get support and everything that way. But
yeah, you end up having to open a million tabs to get to wherever you need to be to read more information.
Right. And one of the coolest ideas I saw submitted by a couple of people in the comments. Someone had suggested that maybe for bulk and plugins, maybe you do the e-commerce type of deal where you just add them to a cart and then you install everything. But then Brad Tusnard suggested that the plugin installation could use Ajax, so you can install plugins in place instead of having to go through a series of steps or new tabs to install multiple plugins. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So we'll have a link to this in the show notes on how you can get involved. Apparently, a lot of the changes are minor, low-level changes that wouldn't take much in the way of contributors to get a hold of in order to make a substantial improvement on the page. So alternatively, you can also leave feedback on that post. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing what kind of improvements are added to the plugin management page. And hey, guess what? Well, we can't sing Happy Birthday because it's a copyrighted song, if you could believe it or not, but WordPress has turned 11.
Yay!
So WordPress has turned 11. The birthday was March 27th, right?
Yes.
And 11 years old. So last year at this time, everybody across the world was celebrating WordPress's 10th birthday, a decade of open source goodness. And that was really cool because there was birthday cakes and everything. You could see everybody was having different parties around the world. And this year we're talking about WordPress powering 22% of the web with a content management system market share of 60%. And how long ago was it where we were using Kubrick or something that was blue with rounded corners, and maybe WordPress didn't have the built-in plugin installer or auto updater. It's come a long way since the early days.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's over 31,000 free plugins available. Look at this number, 665 million plugin downloads. That is a lot of plugin downloads.
Yeah, I think plugins are part of what have made WordPress so successful.
Exactly, the community and the ecosystem around it. So happy birthday to WordPress, and thank you to everyone involved, any contributor, whether it be through code or documentation or anything that could be considered a contribution. Thank you very much, and looking forward to WordPress's 12th birthday. So that's going to round it up for the headlines of this week. Let's bring on our special guest here, extra special, very special. His name is Ryan Vaughn, and he is the co-founder and CEO of a website called Varsity News Network. And the service has actually been described as the ESPN for high school sports. Ryan, thank you very much for joining us and being on the show today.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Jeff and Sarah, and I'd like to say that, in my opinion, it's an extra special show today.
Thank you very much. So what are you trying to achieve through Varsity News Network? Sort of describe to us what it is and what it does.
Yeah, so well, those are two different questions, right? So what it is it's a recognition engine for high school athletes, and that leads into what we're trying to achieve. So I'll tell a quick story. So my athletic career, I played every single sport under the sun growing up, from 4th grade, like ASO youth soccer, all the way up to senior year basketball and football. And throughout that entire time, my mom never missed a game, not one. And this is a pretty big deal for her. She, working mom, single mom for a good period of that as well. So it was a big deal. And the pinnacle of my athletic career was senior year varsity basketball, and we won the district championship. And I remember this very, very vividly. We're at an away gym at Granville High School, and as the final buzzer sounds, we win the game, and our section of the crowd rushes the court. And I see my mom, this little 5'4", short, scrawny lady, just running towards me. She runs up and she jumps in my arms. I give her a big hug. And it was, the culmination of an awful lot of nights in the driveway. So fast forward to the next day. Naturally, I run out to the mailbox to see what the local paper wrote about the biggest game in history, which is exactly what it was. And as it turns out, the entire front page of the paper was a picture of me hugging my mom on the basketball court.
Oh, how about that?
So, yeah, 17-year-old kid, that's a little embarrassing, but I've since gotten some context around it, and so it has a little bit different meaning now. And it's interesting. Now, to this day, whenever family and friends come to the house, they get the tour of the house. My mom brings them upstairs and shows them the living room, does the whole thing, right? And then it always ends with this picture. And my mom shows the laminated framed version of us hugging on the basketball court, and then she gets to talk about all the stuff that basketball meant to our family. So, I tell that story because it kind of illustrates how media can stimulate conversations. Like the moment we walk by that picture, all of a sudden we're back in that moment.
Right.
And unfortunately, as local media has less and less resources to do what they once did in covering high school sports, what you find is that the vast majority of high school athletics don't receive any coverage, and if they do, it's very, very minimal. And that's doubly so if you don't play football, right? So if you're a field hockey player or a golfer or something like this, there's not a whole lot of recognition for you. So what VNN aims to achieve is recognizing every single one of those uncovered athletes from every sport, from football to field hockey and everything in between, by localizing the content production process inside each individual school across America.
And by doing that, at least from the content perspective, you folks are using WordPress for the various sites. Now, is it like a WordPress multi-site install where each one is like a part of a network, or is it separate WordPress installs?
No, they're definitely part of a network. It's a WordPress multi-site. And we've actually been using that, or we've been using WordPress as a whole since we started the company. And believe it or not, the product was way, way different at that point. But we originally got into WordPress because as a couple guys in a garage trying to get something off the ground, it was easily the quickest way to prototype and to get something that was valuable into the hands of customers really quickly. And what it allowed to do is, kind of by leveraging the plugin library that you guys had mentioned earlier, it allowed us to move very, very rapidly and create a lot of value in a short amount of time for high school athletic directors who we thought was our customers at the time. And so we got in front of them really quickly, which was a pretty basic WordPress thing at that time. And immediately they started kind of tearing it to shreds and saying, well, it should do this, it should do that, it should have stats, it should have scores, da-da-da-da-da, right? But that then kind of gave us a roadmap for what we wanted to build on top of that, and has kind of led us to where we are today.
So take us back to the beginning when you said it was very much a different product. You guys, did you evaluate other content management systems before you came across and decided to use WordPress? And when you used WordPress, what sort of struggles did you encounter?
So we evaluated some. I think we evaluated Drupal, we evaluated WordPress, and we evaluated just building it our own, through some sort of framework. And at the end of the day, again, speed rules in new businesses and startups. So we ended up going that way. But it's not to say that there hasn't been some challenges along the way as well. I think as we've grown, one of the primary challenges we've had with WordPress is the scalability of it. And I look at WordPress.com powering however many, you probably know the number. How many blogs does WordPress.com power?
Millions.
Well, that's not helpful. I know it's millions. Whatever.
I don't know off the top. Sarah, do you know?
No, I don't. But it is millions.
700 million, maybe?
It's in the millions.
It's like around 700 million.
786,338,412.
That was pretty close.
Yep. So obviously it can scale, right? That's the bullet point. But certainly there's a lot of growing pains that we've experienced that go along with that scalability. And so what we've kind of taken to doing is, as we've expanded our product suite, we have an iPhone app, an Android app. We have a number of different kind of process enablement applications that are mostly built in PHP, but with a variety of different frameworks. What we've tried to do, and kind of the direction we try to take, is basically abstracting the kind of the score reporting aspects, the video sharing aspects, kind of the really tactical single use case applications that we've built, abstracting those away from WordPress and allowing WordPress to focus really on what it does well, which is the content management and the the telling the stories about the incredible accomplishments of athletes. But then the kind of the secret sauce to all of this is marrying all of those pieces of technology, both WordPress and the satellite applications we've built, all into a single web presence that makes each school that works with us, their athletic department, look amazing.
And when it comes to making their websites look amazing, are you using a specific WordPress theme? Is that custom developed? How does that work?
No, we built that on, it's kind of actually two steps. So when we first started, we were using a theme. I don't remember what it was at this point, but we just pulled one off the shelf. Again, speed rules in the beginning. But since then, we've definitely built our own theme, and we continue to iterate on it now. Although rumblings are happening around revising that and releasing kind of WordPress or VNN 3.0 theme as well. But I won't give you any more details about that just yet.
Oh, darn.
I know.
So it's interesting. You guys have a partner schools, V&M partner schools all across the country, and I noticed that my high school I graduated from is using VNN.
How cool is that?
Yeah, the North Royalton Bears. I'm like, well, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's got the purple colors. It's got the school colors, the mascot. I mean, it looks pretty good.
Yeah. We started in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So shout out to Beer City, USA. There's a budding startup scene here as well. Although we're lucky enough to kind of be at the forefront of that, which is really exciting as well. Also, the home of a number of different things. 3 of the top 5 furniture manufacturers in the world are in Grand Rapids. That says Hayworth, Herman Miller, and Steelcase, and then also we're the home of Amway. So we definitely have a lot of interesting things going on here, but startups has kind of been this new development over the past couple of years, and we've been lucky enough to kind of ride that wave. So starting in West Michigan, we got some traction there, expanded across the state, and then everything started to happen really fast. So within the past year or so, maybe a little above a year, we've grown from a Michigan company with a couple schools inside of Indiana into a company that now spans 12 states and has clients in 12 states, and we have a dominant market position in Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, and are well on our way in Texas as well, which is exciting.
And speaking of expanding, you guys earlier this year, V&N received $3 million in venture capital funding, and from what I read, you guys are going to use that for national expansion?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's used for a whole bunch of things, but they all serve to help us expand nationally and bring the kind of the automatic sports information product that we provide to schools all across the country.
So when it comes to setting up these sites for these high schools, how did you determine that? Okay, they got to have galleries, they got to have this, they got to have that, a certain feature set in order to really work, to be attractive.
It's interesting. So we looked at professional sports and collegiate sports, and what we found kind of being in the industry for a while. Because actually, before I started VNN, I had started a separate company which was also powered by WordPress called West Michigan All Star, and that was a sports publication about high school sports in West Michigan. It used the traditional kind of journalistic business model, which has some limitations, which is why we went away from it. But being in the environment for a while, we looked at professional and collegiate sports, and it's almost used as a kind of future casting tool to say, like, okay, pros and colleges are doing these things, so in about 2 years, high schools will be doing these things as well. Now, so that certainly provided a lot of ideas. There's a big challenge in that approach, though, and this is what we've become pretty good at solving, is that say take photo galleries or streaming video or things like this that have now become pretty commonplace in professional and collegiate sports. There's a big resource gap between pro and college sports and high school sports, and primarily that comes into play with the presence or absence of a sports information department. So colleges and pro teams have entire departments, a sports information director plus a staff of people going out to games, taking pictures, taking videos, writing articles, keeping stats, scores, the whole works, and then uploading that onto a single site to represent either that school or that team's sports. And obviously, most high schools across the country don't have any of those resources. They don't have 70, 80 grand to dump on a sports information director, much less the staff.
They don't have the money. Colleges, they have the money.
Well, yeah, and so that's where VNN comes into play. Is we allow a high school to have the result, like the collegiate level sports information presence, with all of the scores and stats and schedules and pictures and videos and everything that entails, but without having to do any of the work. And we do that by crowdsourcing content and by systematizing the content production process.
So the site itself, when you set it up for a high school, it's powered by WordPress. It's using a WordPress theme, but you're using different apps like Pressbox and scheduling, and you're using all these different apps to bring in information related to what's going on in the sports scene, and it's presented in WordPress, such as posts. So it looks like WordPress is doing it all.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely leveraged WordPress to a great degree, and there's been a lot of positives that have gone every step of the way as we've worked with it.
It's something I didn't know about, but you guys actually created the Pressbox app to make it easier for to report scores, correct?
True. Yeah, we did.
And why is that? Is there a mandation that the coach after a game has to call a certain amount of media outlets and tell them the scores of the games?
What a good question. Yeah. So across the country, varsity sports, varsity coaches are required to let their state associations know what the score of the game was, and they do this so that they can get into the playoffs, as an example. Because if people don't know your score, they don't know your record, and so on and so forth. So there's this mandate out there for coaches to report the results of their games to state associations, and then of course the local media, because they're trying to do their best to cover all the games that they can. They have call centers, in various places around the country that will call the coach up to like 1 o'clock in the morning after the game and ask them what the score was, so that they can print it in the next, the following day's paper. So I don't know if you've ever gotten a call, essentially a solicitor call at 1 o'clock in the morning. Not fun. It's even less fun when you lost the game and you don't want to talk about it anymore. But that's really what Pressbox solves. Is it eliminates those phone calls and eliminates having to report to 5, 6, 7 different media outlets by just providing a single source that coaches can jump on. If they can write a quick recap if they want to, or they can just stick with the score or the box score, etc. And then Pressbox takes care of the rest. It sends it to the appropriate media outlets for that specific geography. It's also hooked up into the school's Facebook and Twitter accounts so that it starts to spread there, and then finally populates on their WordPress-driven VNN website as well.
And going back to the topic of colleges having the money and high schools not really so much, at least here in my local area, I can't tell you how many times issues go up on the ballot or levies and they fail. And what's the first thing they start cutting? Well, sports, electives, things that are sort of on the fringe, and then they slowly work their way in towards education. So for high schools that don't necessarily have the funds, or maybe are in a small town or less populated areas where the tax base maybe school's not making a lot of money, how affordable is VNN? How much do you charge? Is there a recurring fee to use VNN?
Well, so we charge schools. It's actually very affordable. So we charge schools a one-time fee of $900 to use the suite of applications and everything that is entailed within that. So, in reality, a school can use VNN for $900, and that's it. Many schools, that's petty cash. So that's we've tried to price ourselves such that it's easy to adopt, and that's part of the reason why we've gotten the adoption that we've gotten thus far. But as we move forward, and the way that VNN makes money, and the way that we provide a lot of additional value to our schools, is that we also have a sales force that is distributed across the country as well, that not only talks to schools but also then talks to local businesses in the area of each of the schools that we work with. So each of these sales reps will go out and talk to businesses and essentially get sponsorships for the site on behalf of the school, and then split that revenue with the school as well. So, fast forward a year after signing up, a school, and many schools, and in fact most schools that work with us, realize some sort of revenue from that as well, making the whole enterprise profitable.
Talk about hyper-targeted ads. I mean, you have a website dedicated to the athletics department of a high school in that area, and you have sponsors or advertising showing up from businesses in that local area, and you figure the people that are, visiting the website on a daily basis to keep tabs on what's going on with their high school sports are probably live within that area. I mean, everything is targeted right there for you.
Well, yeah, and I think, there's a lot of businesses across the country that, there's family businesses or, local businesses that will support the school just because it's the right thing to do. And quite often the vehicles that they've had to do that, whether that's programs or, tickets or whatever, they don't really expect an ROI from that, but they do it because it's the right thing to do and because they want to help the school buy uniforms or whatever it is that they need to do. So what VNN provides is really the first channel through which advertisers and local businesses can still support the school and still help to buy those uniforms while also expecting an ROI. And we do that because there's a number of our schools that are even upwards of like 40,000 page views per month on a single school, which is a very, very targeted 40,000 page views of people who live, in most cases within like 15 miles of you, if not closer. That are interested in the exact same sports team that you represent. So it's a pretty cool, as you said, targeted market.
So what's the most common feedback you've received from athletic department directors or the people who are in charge of managing and maintaining this website that uses VNN? What's the most common feedback you've received?
The most common feedback we've received. We did a survey a little bit ago around, and we just kind of like reached out to all of our customers and asked a question similar to this. And essentially what we heard back was, that you guys are doing an awesome job, and we also want you to take on this thing, and this thing. So what we run into, and I think probably, we're lucky enough to have earned the trust of our customers such that they want us to take on these new things and they want to, kind of partner deeper with us. But the reality is that the better we do, the more stuff there is to do, because there's just a lot of, whether it's duplicate entry or just inefficiencies within high school sports communication that we know we can solve. We just have to pick and choose our battles, like which is the most important to solve for the most amount of people first.
Yeah, you're able to, via using the custom theme and locking that all down, you're able to at least control, for the most part, the design and how it looks. On most of these high school websites I've seen that are hosted on VNN, it almost seems like almost all the content is automated in some way, whether it's through the press box or through the scheduler. It's hard to sometimes see whether there's actually a human being writing content and publishing stuff within the post.
Yeah.
Do you ever look at sites like that and say, it'd be really nice if they had some sort of media person dedicated to covering what was really happening in sports and really, really utilizing WordPress to show all that off, or is it just one more customer? I mean,
well, so I think there's this is the example of the restrictions that high school athletic directors have to deal with, is they just don't have the resources to hire that person, right? And that's not to say that none of them do, because some of the more affluent or more successful schools certainly do. They might have a sports information director, or they might have an administrative assistant who's particularly motivated, or they might have a group of students who take this on in sort of a class. We've actually developed a curriculum that journalism classes can use to kind of teach them online community development and some very cool things like that. But at the end of the day, there's such a dearth of resources within this marketplace that one of the first things that we set out to accomplish, and I think one of the big values that we provide for high schools, is the ability to leverage technology to kind of create a baseline of content automatically. And so, whether that's score reports, stat reports, kind of game summaries and things like this, we can automate the majority of those to kind of take that off of even if there is a sports information director, take that off of his or her plate so that they can really focus on, hey, what's the real human interest story here? Like what sort of amazing things are our kids doing that we want to talk about and that we want to promote? Like maybe they're holding a rally to, there was one earlier this year, somebody held a rally to raise money for their sort of like, it's not really a mascot, it was like their, it was an old janitor at the school that was kind of, it was kind of a rallying cry for their whole school. And this person had cancer, and so they were trying to raise money for the basketball team was trying to raise money for this individual, And that's the type of thing that this kind of frees them up to talk about.
Yeah, and that's some of the really cool stuff when people utilize their sites in that way.
Yeah, and certainly in the future, over the next couple of years, we see more and more of that taking place. But in order to bridge that gap and help schools to kind of, first experiment with, and then second see the value in taking an active role in promoting their athletics, sometimes you have to lower the bar, and that's kind of, we've lowered the bar to adoption to help more and more people start to take advantage of these things. And then as we go, we're starting to see schools, they see the value of just doing a little bit, so then they start to do more, and then they start to do more, and pretty soon you're bringing in 40,000 views per month.
Now, I know you have a sales and marketing team, but I think most of that has to do with getting the sponsorship and the sales and the deals for these local sites. But do you have a team in place that goes to the various high schools and tries to sell maybe WordPress or VNN and how it uses WordPress? Is WordPress a selling point that you bring up when trying to get a high school to use VNN, or is VNN gotten to the point now where it's sort of selling itself and other high schools are like, I come across this site and notice it's VNN and I want that too?
Yeah, it's more of the latter, actually. So in the beginning, when we first started this company, the only people that bought from us were kind of crazy people that wanted to try something new that nobody had ever done before, because literally nobody was doing anything like this. This was about 4 years ago or so. And so, at that time, we were using every single trick that we could come up with to try to get somebody to partner with us. But, sports is an inherently social environment. And so what we see now is that, as we start to facilitate the communication between, the athletic department and their community, and between athletic departments through the VNN platform, whether it's through the core, WordPress website or through some of the satellite applications that we've developed as well, it definitely creates these sort of touch points between people who are using VNN and their counterparts in other schools. And you do get these like aha moments, like, wait, what the heck was that, that kind of game summary that you put together that was so neatly laid out and had all the information I wanted? How'd you do that? Right? And like, oh yeah, well, we did that through VNN.
Awesome. Do you find yourself having to train new clients, athletic department directors, on how to specifically use WordPress? Is there any training involved, and how does that work?
There is. We have a support department that spends a lot of time with whether it's the athletic department or the coaches or the parents or the students or whoever's really involved in kind of contributing to these sites. To be honest, it totally depends on the person, how much training is required. Some people just they log on and they get it. We've simplified the admin interface to really be kind of a sports experience, more so than anything else. So like, for example, there's a field for, like in a game report, there's a field for the score. There's a field for the opponent. There's a field for the points for, points against, and things like this. So it kind of walks you through the process to kind of make it, an easier transition for people who are just used to talking sports and maybe not talking technology to actually start to contribute content on a technology platform.
A lot of use of custom fields there, I hear.
You got it.
So do you have any, do you know offhand what plugins you're using, or which ones have been really helpful in terms of features for VNN websites?
We started out by using an awful lot of plugins, and as we've grown, we've kind of gotten away from that, and have started to build more and more stuff in-house. Whether that's through the satellite applications or whether that's our own custom plugins. So while we were using an awful lot in the beginning, as we've grown and as we've been forced to confront the scalability challenge, some of the security challenges, and then just making sure that everything that we build we understand and we can extend upon, we've started actually to build most stuff in-house.
Well, if you ever decide that maybe you want to just build it in-house, feel free to create a plugin and put it on a directory, add to it. Have you guys thought about that? Have you guys created a plugin for the heck of it and put it on the repo yet?
I think we have, but I don't know what it's called. I'll have to check with our guys afterwards on that. If we hadn't, we better do that.
It's all about goodwill.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true.
Speaking of plugins, you and I had talked earlier this week. feel free to put a request out. I know you were looking for a specific plugin. Obviously, these high schools, one of the biggest pieces of media they all use is images from the game or special events, and they all have these galleries. But go ahead and put your request out there for a plugin you're looking for, because I couldn't help you.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so there's actually a couple things. So one of the things that we're going to be working on moving forward is kind of opening up our system to just interested parties who want to create value for high school sports. So certainly that's sort of an open call for cool pieces of technology that might prove beneficial to high school athletes or high school athletic departments. We're looking to to kind of provide a platform for those people who have ideas around that. But I think specifically one thing that we've kind of targeted that schools could certainly benefit from is we provide a platform for sharing photos and for uploading photos and so forth, and then that's actually driven through WordPress as well. And there's thousands upon thousands of photos uploaded to that about the local school by the local school. And one of the things, as we've discussed in the past, schools are they're pressed for cash and they're trying to do whatever they can to fundraise. One of the things they look to do is to sell those photos and to offer the opportunity for interested parents, interested alumni, fans, etc., to purchase photos from the game. And so what we don't have, when we've looked at potentially building it, but certainly would love to, if somebody knows of something, that'd be fantastic, is a way to sell photos directly within your WordPress website, and the photos then hosted on your WordPress website as well. That'd be an interesting thing for sure.
Well, I put the call out in the WordPress Weekly chat room, and I also have a couple people almost offering to do a SEO audit for your site to help you out with some SEO on the VNN website.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Would love to.
So a couple of people are saying, site title and the feeds, and they're noticing some things that could help you out. So we'll see what happens. Maybe I can hook them up with you.
Absolutely.
Make the connection there. So that's you're talking about an SDK, right? You're developing an SDK for other people to sort of tap into your platform.
Yeah, we are, and we're in the kind of the early stages of that right now. But certainly, it's something that we're actively working on, and kind of creating this open community. Like one of the things I really like that you guys were talking about earlier is the environment that WordPress has created for innovation by everybody, right? It's just a really cool thing, and I think WordPress has gotten to their 11th birthday because they were so successful at kind of opening those doors to everybody. And for us, it's a kind of a focused version of that. We're really passionate, to a man, to a woman. Everybody in this company is very, very passionate about sports, and particularly high school sports, because that's the one thing that we all share in common. We all played in high school. And so we want to create, and we're looking to create the same type of environment for innovation from wherever it comes from, but just focused on the high school sports market.
That sounds awesome. I love what you guys are doing with VNN. It's really cool. You're utilizing WordPress in this way, and it's even cooler that my high school is using VNN.
Hoorah!
That's pretty neat. I think, Sarah, do you have any questions here for Ryan before we wrap it up? I think you have a plugin suggestion for him.
No? Well, I mean, he might look into easy digital downloads for selling photos. So that's one some people in the chat room were agreeing might be a good one.
I will check it out.
Yeah, it's free.
Awesome. We like free. We're not opposed. We're not opposed to paying, but we really, really do like free.
Awesome, Ryan. I want to thank you very much for spending some time and explaining to us what VNN is. It's a pretty cool service. I'm glad to see that there's something out there powered by WordPress that really puts the focus back on not just football, but all sports at the high school level, but gives it that collegiate feel. So thanks a lot for what you're doing, and best of luck to you in the future.
Absolutely. And again, guys, thank you very much for having me on, for giving high school athletics the opportunity to reach out to technology. This is certainly a bridge that we're very passionate about building, and thanks for kind of helping us to extend that.
And by the way, for anyone listening, it's varsitynewsnetwork.com, all one word, because if you type VNN into Google, you'll get Vanguard News Network. Two totally different things.
There you go.
Thanks a lot, Ryan. All the best to you.
Appreciate it. Bye.
So that was our guest, Ryan Vaughn, CEO and co-founder of Varsity News Network. Pretty cool, neat little service. What'd you think of that, Sarah? They're actually using, we had someone on the show that uses WordPress multi-site. We haven't had one of those in a long time.
That's cool. I'm glad that they're making such a great use out of it.
So that's going to wrap it up for this week's edition of WordPress Weekly. There will be no show next week due to vacation time. And then the week after that, if things all go according to plan, we will have Nick Volz on from Tech Volts, a youngin' under the age of 18 that's making his way up through the WordPress ecosystem. So it would be really cool to sort of get his take on, what his experience level with WordPress and what he sees. He's part of the next generation of WordPress developers, so it'll be interesting to get his perspective on everything.
Yeah.
He'll be on summer vacation, so we'll be able to talk to him on a Friday.
Awesome.
He'll be out of school. So you can find show notes for this edition of WordPress Weekly on WPTavern.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at Jeffro, that's JEFFR0. Sarah, where can we follow you at on Twitter?
Polly Plummer, POLLYPLUMMER.
Fantastic. Everybody have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you in about 2 weeks.